Uh, It is now 10 o'clock, and so I'm going to go ahead and convene the this work session, division work session of Division 3. This is the 14th of February, 2025. We've got two bills on our agenda today, HB 71, HB 519, both with fiscal note, and then we have an amendment floating around that I hope to talk about, to see if we can get aligned on the right way to settle those down. So is there, Mr. Ripple, just technically, I think it would be more efficient if we talked about HB 519 first.
Okay.
But am I required to go in the order that's presented?
You're not.
Okay. Okay. So, based on conversations and some testimony from, and do we have the amendment?
So I have the amendment to 519 that was handed out at the public hearing last week. I also have your proposed amendment to House Bill 71.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, when you get a chance, hand out the amendment to 71. Is it in our packet already? Okay, all right. So, again, based on testimony and conversations, it became clear that there's a preference, out of politeness and respect, and to further assure the primary beneficiary of that waypoint, that we were going to keep a commitment to consider them in the budget process. And although they were told on record that they should not worry about 519, there's still some concern in some quarters that if we do anything odd to 519, it's going to cause consternation and shock waves. So rather than do that, I think that the amendment, the non-germane amendment that we debated, probably is better to go on to HB 71, and that we'll leave 519 alone. And we can't exec it today, though, right? 519 out of Division 3.
You could vote to make a recommendation on 519. I think you couldn't on House Bill 71 if you wanted to offer this amendment.
Right. Okay. So we may get to that here in a moment. But my proposal is to leave 519 as introduced, and retain 519 as a committee, and to intend to take the subject matter of 519 and put it into HB2, and in the budget process that's going to take place over the next 6 weeks, determine the level that we think we can fund it at. So without committing to money, I want to commit us to a process of retaining 519, putting the material in HB2, and then determining at a later date the level of funding. That's my proposal. That's not a motion, but it's open for discussion. Yes.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for that adjustment in the plan. I think that there was some concern about the waypoint bill, and I appreciate us being able to move forward and keeping it clean. I'm happy with that idea, and I see someone in the public wants to comment, so I will refrain from going on too much further, but I just want to say I appreciate that effort.
Okay, so we still don't have a motion on the floor, and I don't think we need one. Do you have, as a member of the public, would you like to speak about what we're proposing to do on HB 519? If so, this is the time to go to the table and do that. And you need to introduce yourself because the representative here needs your point of contact information.
Hi, members of the committee. My name's Mary Rose Deek, and I have an awareness of this bill and feel that the monies could be used better spent to teach the youth skills, real skills that they can use in the workplace, rather than wasted on mental health services. They could be taught how to use construction equipment or be taught a skill, a real skill, rather than be told that they're mental ill and disabled. They could be saying, well, you're able to do these things. You can get a forklift and go out and plow snow or whatever, and we'll teach you how to do it, rather than just telling them that they're nuts and helping these mental health, I consider them fraudsters, get more money. To me, it's a waste of money that could be better spent teaching real skills that these people need to make it in the world, to have faith in themselves, have faith in their abilities, have faith in their feelings of success instead of being told that they're crazy and will be disabled for the rest of their lives. So I am opposed to this Waypoint funding bill, and would appreciate maybe the Department of Employment Security or some other skill building organizations could bid on teaching these people to have faith in themselves and their abilities instead of telling them they're disabled losers, that their only way out is to take drugs or something. They could feel confident that they're going to have skills and go on the workplace or construction site and know how to wire an electrical circuit or know how to build a circuit board or something like that.
I think we get the gist of your testimony.
Yes.
Are you willing to take questions?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay, these are questions. This is not an intent to debate you because
Okay,
we're not
I would
here.
not be very good at that,
No,
but I'm
no,
just
no, no, no. There's
seeing
no-
what's out there on the street now.
Yeah.
How the mental health system has let these people down by telling them they're disabled
Right.
and they're losers, and instead of just saying, well, you're a great person,
Right.
here what we're going to show you how to use
so will you
a
take a
snowplow.
question?
Okay, yes.
So the subject matter of this, of 519 is really specifically aimed at trying to provide financial resources from the state for the first time to Waypoint and their shelter operation.
Yeah.
They have a shelter operation of 14, and they do have a program to do wraparound services similar, not exactly, but similar to what you're saying. They're trying to give them some life skills. Are you familiar with the Waypoint specifically and their shelter and the wraparound services that they provide?
Well, I've seen people on the street with similar services that they get, but
Yes, ma'am. I'm asking you specifically, though, if your comments
No,
are in
I'm
general
not,
or
but,
about Waypoint specifically.
any kind of mental health organization as such is basically telling the people that they're disabled, loser nut jobs that can't get work and will be losers for the rest of their life. And so they may as well take drugs and hang around the streets.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
even if
so-
they go to these things,
So I'm
it's a waste.
gonna conclude your
Okay.
testimony because
Thank you.
I think we've heard you and understand you. Your comments are, in general, related to the entire way in which our system of care is operating and not specifically towards the subject of this
Well,
bill.
If it's mental health care facility,
Yeah,
then it's a waste of time and money.
right.
And they're overcharging, they're overburdening the budgets
Thank
of
you.
states and local governments, federal governments, and that's why our country's broke.
Thank you for your
We
testimony.
need
I appreciate it.
faith in
Thank you.
ourselves and our abilities.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you bet. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Could I get, excuse me, could I get the spelling of your last name for the record?
If you've got a card filled out, just hand it to the clerk.
It's D as in David,
Yep,
E-A-K. My first name is Mary Rose. That's 2 words.
got it. Thank you.
And I used to work for the public health labs as a lab scientist 3.
Okay, thank you very much.
I encourage you to stay engaged and involved. Thank you for your testimony. Okay. So where were we? We're talking about 519 and the plan. Do we need a formal motion to have Division 3 retain 519 to make a recommendation to the full Finance Committee? Do we need a motion for that?
Yes, you do. Typically, that's, yes.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to recommend to the full Finance Committee that we retain 519 with the idea that the subject will be lifted and put into HB2 for further consideration. Representative Priest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to retain 519 and send it to the Finance Committee to have a discussion to further on to fund this bill.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Representative Seaworth. Okay, so on this, I'll take a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion, please
We have
raise your hand.
discussion?
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Discussion, absolutely.
So I want to make sure that I understand what the motion was, because what came out of Representative Priest was different than what you said. And I have no problem retaining the bill, but at this point in time, I'm not ready to commit it to House Bill 2. I'm ready to consider it for House Bill 2.
Okay, it's horse and cart time, and I'm trying to get the two in my head. I think before we vote to recommend retaining, we should agree on what our intended disposition of the material is. Do you want to speak further to your point about?
I'm fine with the motion, the way that Representative Priest made it. You were a little more concrete in putting it in House Bill 2.
Right. I don't know if we're ready for Representative Priest's motion. Would you consider withdrawing it?
Yes, I'll withdraw it.
All right. Okay. So now the sequence, I want to make sure that we've had the discussion about taking the material and putting it into HB2. I have not thought that to be controversial, but I think you have a point of view we need to understand.
No, thank you. I read through the annual report, and I mean, one thing I pulled out of there that was that, the organization is against the Parents' Bill of Rights. I think that some of the services that they're providing are fine, but I'm somewhat concerned about some of the culture that I read in the annual report as well. So based on that, I feel that I'm not ready to say that this should go in House Bill 2.
Would you like to be able to ask questions again of Waypoint? I think we have a representative here that we could invite to talk to us. Are you willing to speak to some of the issues Representative Daniels has brought up? And we'll need you to state your name and all. Make sure our clerk has your contact info.
Good morning, committee. My name is Bianca Gentile. For the record, I'm the policy advocate for Waypoint, and I'm here happy to answer any questions.
Okay, yes, thank you. In the annual report, it indicated that 2 staff members went to it's like a 5-word long, came across as a diversity, reflection, consultation thing. And I'd like to know a little bit more about what that is about.
Absolutely. So are you referencing kind of the DEI initiatives that used to be in place at Waypoint?
Yes.
So obviously with legislation that is coming down from the federal level and legislation that's on the state level, we have to comply with legislation. So those are things that we would be willing to revisit at this time.
Okay. And trying to think what else.
I have a follow-up to your question, Representative Daniels, and that is, I think your testimony is that to the extent that your Waypoint is complying with things like the DEI initiatives, you're doing it in compliance with federal law so it's a compliance issue. And what do you think the intent of Waypoint is? Should the federal government revoke its obligation and removes the compliance issue from you to participate in DEI training?
Well, our priority first and foremost is for the safety of youth and children. And so anything that we can do to keep the people in the population that we serve safe, that is going to take precedence over anything. And so whether that is, by prioritizing support, by prioritizing two vulnerable populations, that's what we're doing. So whether it is in line with DEI or not, that is not the priority. The priority is to help the vulnerable populations that we serve.
Okay, but as part of your compliance checkoff, the DEI component would be removed. I don't know how you manage compliance, but I imagine there's sort of a compliance checklist of all the things you have to do to maintain your rating and everything. Is that something you currently track, and is that something you would continue to track if the government or the feds revoked the requirement?
Well, we would be compliant with what is coming from the federal government, but if they remove the compliance issue, we would also be compliant with what is coming from the federal government. Now, what we would do as an organization, if both of those, that all of that compliant was taken back, that is something that I would have to go to the CEO to ask. So I can ask that question and definitely get back to the committee on that.
Thank you. Do you have another question?
Yes. Can you explain the organization's opposition to the Parents' Bill of Rights?
I think we consistently, as an organization, have been relatively bipartisan in the sense that we want to make sure that children also have rights and also have the ability to speak out, especially under circumstances where they might not have a particular, where they might not feel safe. So generally speaking, anything that we will speak out against will come from that lens. I hope that answers your question.
I understand your advocacy for the children, but if I recall correctly in reading the annual report, it talked in a negative way against the Parents' Bill of Rights.
Would it be amenable to you for me, from the report, I don't know exactly what you're referencing. Could I go back to that and then get back to you on that?
That would be fine.
Would that be okay?
Representative Tversky?
I was just going to clarify that parental bill of rights is not state law. Parental bill of rights is not law. So if the organization took a stand on a piece of legislation that did not actually get signed into law, I don't know why that's something we need to dig into, but
I think there's so much experience at this table. I'm just going to share my reaction to this issue and invite people to offer a different view or to correct me. But I would think that in sort of the funding of our programs, we need to pay attention to whether or not we can get the services at the right value and the right quality. And so we need to take a look at all these things from a service capability, and that any advocacy that they do on bills is basically First Amendment covered, and they are free to take a position on a bill as they see fit within, and then I would be uncomfortable withholding money over an entity's activism or advocacy. That's me. Does anyone see it differently? Representative
Yeah, I
Nolanko?
guess I have some of the same issues that Representative Daniels had, and maybe to build on that, in order to move this forward, I would think that I'd like the opportunity with the passage of some time for, to the, rather than doing a recommendation to the committee, that we allow ourselves the time to discuss it more at the full committee level. I mean, that'd be my suggestion, because I still, some of the things that are happening with enough speed that that'll allow us some time to clarify where things stand. So that would be my
Sure.
view. I think
If I could-
allowing ourselves additional time to look at this in view of
If I could comment on the
dynamics.
time element,
Sure.
I think we have to make investments because time is one of our scarcest resources at this point. We have the budget that's been delivered to us. We have billions, literally billions of dollars that we have to decide on in a very short amount of time. And I just assume not recycle issues if we can just figure out where to place it and move on. That would be my preference.
Well, I wouldn't consider it recycling. I would consider it, prudent additional consideration.
Well, that's more. Representative Seaworth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question for you, I'm new to this process. It would be my understanding that the purpose of putting this bill or any other large appropriations bill into HB2 is not to say, let's just fund it. It's to have the discussion again in the context of the entire budget. So in seconding the motion, I wasn't saying let's make it HB2 and that's it. It's to continue that discussion and make the right decisions when it comes time to actually vote on the entirety of HB2.
So for a new member of the committee, I think you just said it exactly right. Yeah. Representative Priest, did you?
Yes, again, when we heard testimony from the attorney from DHHS, any person that enters into a contract with them signs an agreement that they abide by all federal and state statutes. And they sign that. So I think Waypoint would also do the same. So I think the concerns that Representative Daniels and others have had does not exist, because I think they would be in compliance with it and work toward that.
So I think the implication of what you just said is, should we pass a parental bill of rights, then based on the standard terms and conditions that Waypoint would sign, they would then be obligated to respect the patient bill or the parent bill of rights. I hope I said parent bill of rights, but
Correct.
okay. So how would you like to resolve this, Representative?
Just one more question. Is the money that you're seeking the only pot of money that would be coming from the state government?
That does not include other services such as Medicaid, Medicare, that we would provide those services. Yes, this is separate. So Representative Edwards had asked for different budget line items from us, and that is something that we're putting together and we'll be able to provide for the committee.
Okay, thank you.
I think I referred to them as lines of business or yeah. So however you do your internal accounting, and it'd be great.
Absolutely.
So do you want to have us proceed with, I mean, maybe we could entertain a motion just to take the material of 519 and place it in HB2 for further discussion and review of budget allocation.
I'm fine with that.
Do you want to make that motion?
I move that we take the content of 519 and place it in House Bill 2 for further discussion.
Is there a second? You second? Do you have a question or is that a second?
That's a question.
Okay.
Is that okay? You didn't, in your motion, you didn't use the word retain.
We're not there yet. I'm explicitly splitting these steps up so that we know where 519, there'll be
Okay.
another motion.
Just because I think technically that's part of what we need to do. Okay, thank you.
So is there a second to,
And I'll second the motion to move this on.
okay, so we'll do this on a show of hands. If you're in favor of taking the language or recommending to finance, I guess is how we have to phrase this, recommending to finance that we take the material of 519 and place it in HB2 for further discussion, raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any opposed. So now I need a second motion to recommend to finance that we will retain HB 519. Representative Telersky, is there a second?
Go ahead, Teresa.
Representative Seaworth, okay, again with the show of hands, if you're in favor of recommending retaining, raise your hand. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So that's that. Okay, so is there anyone here to introduce HB 71? I'm not seeing anyone in the audience. So, Representative Stringham, are you able to just introduce the bill? You don't have to say anything about it, but I think we're supposed to have it formally introduced to the committee.
You all,
You could do it from there.
just if I could, since this is a work session and there's already been a public hearing
Yeah.
in the policy committee prior to this, you don't actually need
Oh,
an
okay.
introduction if you don't want one.
All right. No, we don't need one. Okay. So, so because we haven't really began to talk about HB 71 at all as a division, I'm going a little out of order because we know more about my proposed amendment than we do the bill at this point. So I'm going to opt for us to talk about the amendment to 71. And does everyone have a copy of that? Okay, so this is the non-germane amendment that we talked about in full finance the other day, but it's been revised given the input that was received there from Dartmouth, the Hospital Association, members of the full finance committee, and others, to where this is a repositioning of the non-germane amendment in a way that should satisfy the concerns I think I heard. What it does is it just takes in the terms and conditions that the department uses to contract with vendors. There's already a section in there, section 6.1, that requires compliance with all the civil rights laws. And so what I think they would do with lines 10 through 12 is to insert into those standard terms and conditions the requirement to also comply with the Patient Bill of Rights by citing the RSA number. So it's not a big deal. It's just another comma and asking them to comply with a part of our law that is also intended to enhance our civil rights positions. Let me finish with the whole thing. Okay, and then you'll see on line 13 and 14 a repeal of what we just put in with an effective date of November 30, 2026. Now, why am I setting this up on kind of a 2-year life cycle and then it gets removed from law? It's because, in my bureaucratic experience, you don't want to orphan legal requirements in perpetuity. You know, at some point, this will become part of the culture, part of what we do, and it'll just happen naturally without requiring a law any longer. And then so as a result, let's just withdraw the law after it becomes a clear part of the culture and is already embedded in the terms and conditions. I don't imagine anyone would remove it from the terms and conditions when this sunsets. It's just that it's one less check mark that some bureaucrat has to keep track of for compliance. So that's why there's a repeal in there. And then so that's really what this non-germane amendment does with its adjustment. So I would move that we go ahead and pass HB 70, this amendment to HB 71 2025-0416 hotel to supplement HB 71. And we're still going to talk about HB 71. We may not want to do any of HB 71, but that will at least be the shell for this amendment. That's my motion. Is there a second? Yeah.
Can we have some discussion on the resulting amendment here?
Yes, I think that comes after,
Oh, so you just want a motion to consider it,
Yeah.
not to accept it? Okay.
right. And then we'll open it for discussion. Is there a second? Seconded. Okay, so now we can get into the discussion. Is there anyone in the audience, Mr. Hode? Do you care to make us smarter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Matthew Hood, Government Relations at Dartmouth Health. With respect to the amendment that you're proposing to amend the HHS contracts to include a line that requires compliance with the Patient Bill of Rights, we're totally supportive of that, fine with that addition. I can't speak to anything about the underlying bill.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be really clear about that.
No need.
Thank you.
So are there any questions for Dartmouth? I think I see two red lights. I see one red light. I see two red lights. So Representative Priest,
I don't have any questions for the gentleman here.
that's where we're at. We're questioning. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate you pulling me aside and talking to me last Friday. So
Thank you for that conversation, Mr. Chair,
you bet.
and
Thank
where we
you.
ended up.
Yeah. Mr. Williams, do you want to tell us something about? Now you're here representing Melissa St. Cyr, who spends part of her life dealing with the terms and conditions and contracts. And you're not the subject matter expert, I don't think, are you?
For the record, John Williams, the legislative director for the department, and even though I've had experience in contracting in my prior work within the agency, I am not here in a capacity to discuss contracts, but I am here, Chairman Edwards, to acknowledge that in the same way that Dartmouth Hitchcock is fine with the amendment, the department is also fine with this amendment.
Are there any questions for the department? I'm not seeing any. Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. Appreciate it. Okay, so is there any further discussion about the amendment? Mr. Ripple, you tried to tackle me earlier. What did I miss?
I just wanted to point out from a process perspective, I don't want to speak for the House Clerk, but I think because this amendment is, although it's similar to the previous amendment, because it's being attached to a different bill, it would require another non-germane public hearing in the full Finance Committee before it could be voted on. I think that's what
What is the
clerk would say.
probability of you being right?
I think in this case, it's fairly high.
Can
All right.
I
So
ask a question?
yes.
Mr. Ripple, I know that we've been known to do some quick physical posting of hearings. Is there any way we can squeeze it in for Tuesday when the full Finance Committee meets?
I will check and see if we can do that.
Okay. Let's do that if we can. we're just spending more time on this than I had hoped, but it's getting better. Hi, do you have a comment from the community? Yeah, please. And then restate your name because we're on a different bill.
Hello, my name's Mary Rose Deek, and I support the amendment regarding the Patient's Bill of Rights to be added. I also have had experience with this hope and prayer. Apparently, it's some kind of law that has religious discrimination overtones, where they force somebody to be, I guess, involuntarily committed in hopes that they find God or something like that. And the bill itself is.
May I ask you to
Yeah.
keep your remarks specifically to the amendment before us?
Well, I think it's a good idea to have a patient's Bill of Rights stated clearly in the bill.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'll change my motion. I don't even know that we need a motion on this, but in case we do, I just think that the motion is that we're going to take this amendment as is to the full Finance Committee to have another hearing on this as a non-germane amendment, with the idea that we'll attach it to HB 71 in whatever form HB 71 is by the time it leaves full finance. It's a long motion. Anyone care to second? That was the restatement.
Am I seconding you or making that motion myself?
You're seconding it.
Great, I second.
Okay. All right. So do you have more discussion, Representative Priest?
Yes, I just want to commend you for this amendment. I think it really clarifies it and brings in the realities of what DHHS is doing with their contracting.
Well, thank you. I think it's a testimony to the genius of the process. You know, I just happened to be bumbling along at the time and got guided properly. So thank you. Representative Stringham?
Yeah, I would like to thank you as well for the movement of this amendment, but I want kind of have a little bit of a comment about the discussion we had, because you know, I think I'm suffering a little bit from post-COVID stress disorder instead of PTSD, PCSD. You know, so when that discussion happens, you know, we were talking about a specific case at Dartmouth Hitchcock, which is not only a great hospital for New Hampshire, but it's a great hospital for the country. And I have a high level of trust in the medical professionals there. I think I think when they come in, they know they're getting measured on the outcomes that they deliver for patients that do things like get a transplant, other major procedures. They're required to establish protocols for best outcomes. And, you know, so they're measured on these success rates, and to the point where the amount they get paid is based on their quality scores and things like how many of these patients have failures. So, you know, if they've come up as part of the protocol, they require a series of diagnostic tests or weight loss or other things that may delay or, when a patient would get a particular treatment. You know, I trust that they've done it from the standpoint of trying to look out for the entire healthcare system as well as the welfare for the patient. And you know, I mentioned this PCSD or post-COVID. So when I see an incredibly strong reaction, to me, it seemed substantial to an issue of requiring masks or public health officials being criticized or vaccines being a good idea for a particular group you know, I react probably a little more strongly than I should. And I do think that, you know, using the phrase, this was an egregious violation of the Patient Bill of Rights, that's kind of what got me started feeling a little more anxious about this discussion and that amendment. So,
Okay. Thank you for the reminder. It was my intent coming into this to publicly restate my overstatement of what happened at Dartmouth. I had an opportunity to get additional information. I don't think that what happened to this particular patient was intended to be systemic. I think it was a one-off that as it got escalated through their chain of command, their leadership got involved pretty quickly, tried to understand it and resolve it, and so I spoke more strongly than I ought to have, given that I didn't have a 360-degree view of everyone's perspective. But since I've become more informed, I realize in hindsight that my use of the word egregious was excessive. And so I would just simply say this was an oops, that they intended to respect the Bill of Rights, and it didn't happen. There was a real instance where it didn't happen, but that it wasn't intentional or systemic. It just was the way it happens in the real world, where everything's complex. And also, too, I think the other implied point that you have is that in the terms and conditions on the vaccine status, it clearly says in there that healthcare can't be limited solely based on vaccine status. And so vaccine status would, I think, to your other point about weight loss and other things, would be a variable in an overall holistic view of whether or not the patient would likely benefit from the procedures. So I don't think, and given that Dartmouth is okay with this, I think this leaves them with the professional discretion that they're entitled to.
well, thank you very much for that clarification and those comments, and it's consistent with every other circumstances that I've dealt with you over the last 6 years, that you're very thoughtful and moving forward. I know we're all very grateful that the patient that was concerned about access to care, which was being potentially offered to him just before Christmas, has now been fully resolved and 6 weeks later, which, while I'm sure feels like a long time, that's pretty responsive for the healthcare system that we have. And once again, I thank you for, I think we all want to see the Patient's Bill of Rights being effectively implemented, and I think the way that you've written in to be included in contracts is something I can certainly support.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Hodel, a shout out to you. If you would just take back to your leadership my public apology. It's sincere. I got a little emotionally invested in patient care, which is where I grew up. So,
Mr. Chair, thank you. As you and I discussed, I didn't feel that that was necessary, but I will say that the tenor and the thoughtfulness of this conversation is something that I'm glad to be here in person to have been part of and witness. Thank you.
all right, thank you. Okay, so where were we? We're in the discussion, I think, of a very long motion. Do you have more to say, Representative Flersky? I'm just
No,
trying
I
to.
forgot I made a motion.
Yeah, I think what we're doing is we're just trying to go ahead and take this non-germane amendment, and since we're attaching it to 71 instead of 519, we have to go to full finance to
Can I-
say this is under the other bill. Yes.
So
you
I
may.
know in past meetings that we've had, sometimes we will have sort of a non-binding vote. Let's say you have used the
Yeah.
word straw poll.
Yeah.
Maybe we could just, so we can keep a record of our discussions,
Yeah.
I'd say make a motion for a straw poll that we will be amending House Bill 71 with your amendment, just so we're all clear on where we got to this place. I don't even know if that's a legit question to ask.
Anything that moves us forward at this point. Have you got an opinion, Mr. Ripple, on whether or not we can add this to the calendar and have the non-germane hearing on what next finance meeting?
I haven't heard back yet, but I believe House Bill 71 isn't even on the calendar for Tuesday's meeting now, non-germane amendment or not. So, yeah, I've checked with the clerk. I'll let you know what I find out.
Okay, so to your straw poll, can we straw poll it to say that we want to do the proper House procedure and we want to keep moving this non-germane amendment with the intent of attaching it to 71, whatever 71 looks like in the future? All right, all in favor of that? All right, thank you. Okay. So now I think we're on HB 71 FN, and I don't see any of the representatives that sponsored this bill present. So I kind of always look forward to hearing what the people who heard this in the policy committee heard on this. I think as I picked up more grapevine than officially, is that the idea of the proponents was that this bill would protect the facilities of our educational system so that they can, in the future, be dedicated to their core function of educating students. And I think the opponents were concerned that with this in place, it could jeopardize funding from the federal government if we aren't complying with, I guess, shelter requirements for refugees and other authorized immigrants. So I think that's the setup for the pro and con. So we can begin discussion on it. The motion that brought, or what happened is it passed on a party line vote out of the committee. It got to the floor. I think that was essentially a party line vote. Here, I don't know where we stand on it, but I'd like to take a motion to OTPA maybe, HB 71, and then we would have a discussion on that.
I'd like to have a work session, which is what this is supposed to be, and discuss the bill itself.
There's no one here, but go. But,
Mr. Williams, is anyone from the department that could discuss?
No, well, we have education here. Were you here to talk about 71?
Well, but sorry, thank you. My concern is the fiscal note, and I'm assuming that the potential loss of federal revenue is to a department in DHHS, which is what I wanted some discussion on.
Correct.
I mean, 12 to 18 million dollars is a lot of money.
Well, okay, so we get a little, you're right, and we have conflicting stuff. The grid says zeros, and the words say worst case, and so, you know, I think there's a judgment in there, but yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
The fact that this is posted as a work session, I thought that we would have discussion on the bill. Am I misunderstanding?
We can, but nobody showed up to discuss it. Are you prepared to like tell us what you think from a department's perspective, Mr. Williams? If you are, then please. Okay.
Chairman Edwards and Representative Sobolewski, thank you very much for the question. My apologies. I was here today prepared to discuss the amendment that you had already acted on with this committee. I wasn't here prepared to talk on HB 71. I did, however, try to pull up the bill on the website, and regrettably, the General Court website is down. So unless Mr. Ripple has some additional information that he could provide to the committee, otherwise, I could certainly follow up with questions getting back to you. My apologies.
Would you state your name for the record?
Yes, good morning. My name is Diana Fenton. I'm an attorney with the Department of Education. And right now I'm just offering technical assistance to John Williams because I was able to get the bill online.
Oh,
And I think he's just reviewing the fiscal note and the fiscal impact that you had referenced, Representative.
so in the absence of a question, you don't really have anything to add regarding this bill? You didn't intend to add anything?
Like all good lawyers, I'll say it depends.
Yeah.
But no, the Department of Education is here obviously to offer any technical assistance. But when we look at this bill, as previously noted, the fiscal impact, they reached out to both agencies, Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services. The Department of Education's position was that it would not have any fiscal impact on our agency or the local entities. DHHS did have a fiscal impact. And I believe that is what the representative was referencing in her previous comment. So I think I have bought Attorney Williams enough time at this point, so I'm going to graciously hand it over.
So, Mr. Williams, a specific question. As this fiscal note was developed, do you know how the 12 to 18 million figure was determined and what the confidence level of that estimate or worst case scenario is? I mean, what's the background?
Well, first off, I want to thank Attorney Diana Fenton for her assistance because obviously her computer was working better than mine to getting the bill up. I am involved with the processing of all of our fiscal analysis on legislation, working along with Nathan White and his team. And now that I saw the reference that is stated in the fiscal note, it did refresh my recollection. We spent the time when I referred the bill out to the Office of Health Equity. We realized this cut across various programmatic areas within the department, including Medicaid and other areas. So we did generate a request from the other program areas to determine whether or not there would be any of this federal funds that may be at risk. And I do have to emphasize the word may, not shall, was used in the fiscal analysis. So we felt it was important to bring to the attention of the legislature through the Legislative Budget Assistance Office that there was the potential risk of these federal dollars. Any greater level of detail, I would have to take it back, but I do have a recollection of how we arrived at this sum.
So, Mr. Ripple, an LBA question. Do you have any context or background on the development of this fiscal note?
Not very much. So I'm looking at what the department sent us right now, and I'll just say up front, I think the zeros at the top should have said indeterminable instead. In the body of the bill, I do think the phrase worst case scenario is appropriate because it's unknown at this time whether there actually will be any impact, whether there would be any impact to federal funding if this bill were to pass. That said,
Would it imply that the best case is it would have no financial impact at all?
I think that would be the best case, yes. Looking at the department's response to us, there's a paragraph here that references federal funds through the Office of Refugee Resettlement and the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And it reads, considering prior grant awards from both of these entities, the potential loss of federal revenue ranges from 12 to 18 million. So that's the only detail we have at this point.
I'm sorry, I drifted. Could you say that last two sentences again?
So this response from HHS references funds received through the Office of Refugee Resettlement and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which do not require citizenship documentation. So it says, considering prior grant awards from both of those entities, the potential loss of federal revenue ranges from 12 to 18 million dollars.
But they didn't tie that loss specifically to housing them somewhere other than public schools? I mean, we have to house them.
Not in this document. I don't know what the department's backup is for this document.
Right. I mean, I'm just thinking, Mr. Williams, that if we refuse to house them, then we could be subject to losing the grant, but that we don't get demands by the federal government on where to house them. They wouldn't say, put them in your schools or we won't pay you.
I believe that's a fair assessment, Representative Edwards.
All right, thank you. Questions from the committee? Committee's got questions. Representative Wallner?
Thank you. So as I was, what does it mean, institution facilities? It says prohibition of use of school or institution facilities. What does that mean?
Chairman Edwards, I represent Wallner. I would have to get back to you with greater detail on your question. I do see from the actual language in the bill, it does define specifically what they're referring to in that section.
Shelter housing definition.
So,
Yeah, under the shelter and housing definition found on line 5 through 6, and it goes all the way down for subparagraphs as well.
so the key one seems to be coming in around line 17, because the commas are, I think, fairly clear, right? That we're saying that,
No.
that if a public school, a chartered public school, and a public academy, if they were to receive, I don't actually know what that means. Okay, so I think what we ought to do, Mr. Ripple, is this is not on the calendar for finance, is it?
It isn't.
I think we need to do another Division 3 work session and invite more expert testimony that's gone over this, and maybe I can find it on the YouTube, because it's probably all been said and we just haven't listened to it yet. So let's do, when's our next, when do we think we're going to have another Division 3 session? It's when the commissioner comes?
So yes, you have a budget work session on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. I'll see if I can add something to one of those days. Actually, you have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week. Friday's yet to be scheduled.
Okay, so whatever works best with getting it into the calendar without breaking things, I don't care which one that goes in, but just let me know, and then we'll invite the sponsors if in maybe the right people in the right departments. Yeah, Representative Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ripple, with regards to this methodology, and I'm glad Mr. Williams emphasized the word may, that's the key word here in this paragraph. A potential worst case scenario loss, 12 to 18 million. Just for our reference going forward, and this will come up again, and we will get a hard copy of the governor's proposed budget this afternoon. Could you give us a precise location in the proposed budget, accounting unit and all, as to where this would take effect?
I will ask the department to provide that information, yes.
That would be extremely helpful for our next meeting on House Bill 71. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, so we're going to kick this can down the road and try to get the right people in the room. Okay? So it's not a motion, but that's my intent, is that we're going to go ahead and reschedule this and invite some people that can take our questions and provide more detail. Is there any opposition to that?
I have no opposition. I just say I do think we have to understand if there's going to be a financial impact of implementing this, and I concur with doing what we need to do if we're going to be able to vote on the.
All right,
that
my,
side
my,
of it.
my instinct on this is that there is no financial impact. It's worst case scenarios, which I don't consider very practical. And given the way this bill has been moved so far on partisan lines, I'm not really expecting anything different. But we'll see. We'll see. All right. So show of hands, kick the can down the road. All right. That's good. So that's it. I think if there's anything else to add to today's session,
have a quick question.
Representative Telersky?
I just wanted to, Mr. Ripple, just so we, for planning purposes, since the House calendar yet does not have that Friday schedule, Mr. Chairman, we're looking at Tuesday morning is full finance, and then the afternoon is Division 3, correct?
Yeah.
Wednesday is all day Division 3, and Friday,
You would
What-
have Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. when the Division of Medicaid Services would come in.
So
Great.
I have to tell you, I won't be here that Friday. I will be traveling to a wedding in DC, and then I am moving to my new home in Arizona for the week to get it ready for renters. So I'm not going to be here for about 10 days. So I just as soon do this on Tuesday if we can, because I don't think HB2 is going to be ready. And that's the biggest block of time on Tuesday, Commissioner and HB2. I don't think HB2 is going to happen.
There may be a draft of it available. There won't be a formal document introduced by OLS at that point, but
Yeah.
yeah. But you can add this to the Tuesday discussion for sure. I think there'll be time for that.
All right, let's do that. Yes?
just quick question. I'm glad to hear you're going to have some time. Or will we be continuing work under Representative Mooney? That
course.
week?
The vice chair
Great.
is the
I look-
chair in the absence of the chair.
She runs a great meeting. I'm
She
looking forward
does.
to it.
She does. She doesn't have to ask enough questions, though. All right. Any other discussion on 71 or any business that we've conducted today or any business we want to conduct in the future? Mr. Ripple, you want to close us out?
I have nothing more to add.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, Division 3 is adjourned. Thank you.